Good morning, everybody. We will start today's public hearing in a few minutes. Please be aware that the hearing is being recorded. And as mentioned in the reservation for this hearing, the department has decided to set a 5-minute limit for each verbal comment. So we'll give it a few minutes before we kick things off. All right, good morning, everybody, and welcome to today's public hearing. My name is Samantha, or Sam DeMaglio, and I'm an environmental specialist in the Bureau of Water System Engineering in the Division of Water Supply and Geoscience at the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection. I am the rule manager for this rulemaking, and I'll be serving as the hearing officer for today's public hearing. The purpose of this hearing is to accept comments from the public on the department's proposal to amend the Safe Drinking Water Act rules at New Jersey Administrative Code, Title 7, Chapter 10, or NJAC 7:10. The department's notice of rule proposal was published in the New Jersey Register on Monday, February 2nd, 2026. A copy of the rule proposal has also been made available on the department's website. Additionally, notice of the substance of the rule proposal has been distributed via email to news media, news organizations, maintaining a press office in the State House complex, and to the rulemaking listserv maintained by the department to communicate to individuals and organizations regarding its rulemaking. Comments may be presented at this hearing either orally or in writing. In addition, written comments will be accepted until Friday, April 3rd, 2026. Written comments may be submitted electronically on the department's website on the rule comment form. or in hard copy to Stephanie Press, Esquire. Both of these methods are shown on screen for your convenience, and we will send the link to the rule comment form in the chat. I think we've actually already done this. Pursuant to the requirements of the Administrative Procedures Act, specifically those set forth in subsection G of Section 4 of Public Law 1968, Chapter 410, and the rules for state agency rulemaking codified at New Jersey Administrative Code Title I, Chapter 30, Section 5.5, subsection E, or NJAC 1:10-5.5E. I will now read a summary of the factual information upon which the rule proposal is based. The department is proposing to amend the New Jersey Safe Drinking Water Act rules at NJAC 7:10 to establish state-specific requirements for lead and copper. The proposal includes monitoring requirements, treatment requirements, public education, and lead service line replacement requirements for lead, copper, and water quality parameters. Before we begin accepting comments, let me explain how that hearing will be conducted. To successfully gather your comments and for the department to respond to them, it's essential that the hearing be conducted in an orderly fashion. This is a public hearing conducted pursuant to the Administrative Procedures Act. The purpose of the hearing is to provide interested members of the public with a reasonable opportunity to provide oral comments, data, and arguments on the rule proposal to the department. Typically, the department staff does not answer questions, but may respond for clarification purposes. However, any response given here today must be considered preliminary. The department's formal response to all comments and questions received will be issued as part of the rule adoption process. If you wish to speak at this hearing, please indicate your interest as such by selecting the raise your hand function featured at the top of the toolbar of the Teams meeting, or if you're calling in, by pressing *5 on your cell phone. I'll be calling on speakers in turn based on the order that hands are raised. Please note that this hearing is being recorded, and a stenographer will create a transcript to ensure that there is an accurate record of your comments. If you would like to receive a copy of this hearing transcript, you may contact the department at leadndw@dep.nj.gov after the conclusion of the hearing. If you choose to comment, please state your name, spell it for the stenographer, and identify any organization, association, or interest that you represent as applicable. If you brought written copies of your comments, you can simply send a copy to the department at leadndw@dep.nj.gov or submit them online on the rule comment form shown on the screen, and the department will enter them into the official record. Finally, I'd like to thank you all for attending this hearing, and we're going to start calling on commenters. So if you would like, please raise your hand if you would like to speak at this hearing. Hi, good morning, Harvey. If you will, I think we'll unmute you and you should be able to speak.
Am I unmuted now?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Harvey Klein, Harvey Klein. I am the Laboratory Director of Garden State Laboratories. We are an NJDEP certified lab, and we do perform lead and copper in drinking water analysis. I have several comments on the regulations. Most of them are minor, even typographical issues. One is more of a sampling issue. Let me start with the first one, which is on page 5 of the PDF file. In the historic section, it's noted how prior to the 1991 lead and copper federal rule, it states that the maximum contaminant level for lead and copper was 50 milligrams per liter. That's the same as parts per million. That is a typographical error. In fact, the standard was 50 the MCL for lead was 50 micrograms per liter, which is 50 parts per billion. Again, it's just a typographical error. It was not milligrams, it was micrograms. In other words, not parts per million, parts per billion. In 1991, the action level was lowered from 50 to 15 parts per billion for lead and established at 1.3 milligrams per liter for copper. One reason I am familiar with this is that Jim Benson, the health officer of Morris Township, and I wrote an article called Lead in Drinking Water, Investigation of a Corrosive Water Supply. And this article was actually published in January 1983, well before the federal lead and copper rule. And in the article, we referenced the 50 parts per billion. Again, this is merely a typographical issue. The next, again, I think it's a relatively minor issue. On page 232 of the PDF file, 7:10J10.3, it's talking about orthophosphate, which is a very commonly used anti-corrosive compound. It notes that the level should be greater than 0.5 milligrams per liter as phosphate or PO4. Again, I believe that's a typographical error. Orthophosphate and total phosphates are usually reported as P, as phosphorus, not as phosphate. And on page 250, again, 7:10J14I or 1, it notes under water quality parameters, all orthophosphate results must be reported as phosphorus, and again, in parentheses, P. So again, I think that's merely a typographical issue. Reporting as phosphorus is the way it is routinely reported, as opposed to as phosphate itself. Finally, the next issue is not so much typographical, but in the package, in the whole package, it talks about taking samples both first flush, which is the way it's been done for many, many years now, and a 5th liter sample. Theoretically, this is a great idea. You get a lot of information of what's in the first flush and then what's throughout the system. However, from a practical standpoint, I have no doubt it's going to be a challenge for homeowners. Many of the people here participating in the hearing are somewhat familiar with taking water samples, but it's important to recognize that a homeowner who's never taken a water sample for any parameter may be asked to do this type of sampling, and it's somewhat different than the past. Here I have a 1 liter bottle. The method requires that the opening be a wide opening of at least 40 millimeters. This bottle, it's actually 45 millimeters in diameter, so this bottle would meet and does meet the sampling requirements. On the side of the bottle is a mark for 1 liter. Traditionally, the way a sample would be taken is after a faucet has been stagnant or not used for at least 6 hours, the bottle would be held under the faucet would be open, the water would flow into the bottle, it would flow up, and then the bottle removed, the bottle capped, and the faucet could be turned off. That's a standard 1 liter sample. However, the regulations clearly state that for doing first flush, that's called the first flush, and a 5th liter, we need 5 bottles numbered. What is critical and really needs to be done probably from a video standpoint are instructions that the way we did it, here we have it, we're filling up the bottle, the sampler must be aware that they cannot simply, okay, I'm going to put down that bottle. I'm going to cap it. I'm going to take the next bottle. I'm going to uncap it, fill that up, and then close it and do this because there's going to be a time gap between the bottles so that the fifth liter probably would not be the fifth, but maybe the 5.5 or the sixth or even the seventh liter of water, depending upon how fast people do that. So it's critical to make sure that the homeowner, remember, I'm not talking about people who are experienced in sampling, but the homeowner is aware that they should uncap all of the bottles. You fill up the first bottle, and as it's filling up, you bring this up, and then you fill up the second bottle. And as it's filling up, you have the third bottle, and so forth. So you go on until you get all 5 bottles, and the analysis, and then the bottles are put down and capped, and the analysis would be on the first and fifth liter bottle. So again, in theory, this is great, but from a practical standpoint, I think it's very important that the samplers, specifically homeowners and so forth, are aware of how to properly do it. I also
Great.
noted that in these,
Harvey, can I,
yes,
sorry, just one quick. So I want to just thank you for your time, just in case we have some others. If it's all right, we will come
okay.
back to you.
But that was basically it. That was the
Okay.
last point I wanted to make. Thank
Okay,
you.
perfect. All right. And if you need to come back, please feel free to raise your hand again.
That was the
Thank
last
you.
point.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. All right. I believe Deandra, your hand is raised. We're going to unmute you and please feel free to say your comment. Deandra, you should be able to unmute yourself now. And if you could, please introduce yourself as well. All right, Deandra, if you're still in the meeting, we're going to come back to you. Cliff, I see your hand is raised. If you could please introduce yourself, and then state your comment.
Hey, good morning. Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Great. Okay. My name is Cliff Keene. I work for the Atlantic City MUA. And I was really hoping that a couple people would go before me so I could limit my issues. So I'll try to go through the ones that I think are the biggest that I have with it. The first is that this rule changes the tier structure definitions, and that contradicts what the EPA has in their guidelines. And I think that's sort of a structural issue with the entire thing. I agree completely with what Harvey said about the fifth tier sampling. It's going to put a huge operational burden on systems to have first draw samples and then fifth liter samples for all things, especially when we are targeting lead service lines that are make that a requirement for it. The other really significant change in this is that you're asking for the entire house to be off of a stagnation period for the entire home and not just for the fixture that we're collecting the sample from. And I think that's also a pretty big change from what we've seen previously. Um, okay. So I also wanted to mention that I think the tier one public notification requirement here is a little bit interesting in that most other tier one notifications have some type of built-in check to make sure that tier one, that contaminant has been evaluated in some way. This seems to indicate that as soon as you have an action level exceedance, you have a full tier one structure that takes place here. And again, this was 296 pages. I still have a job to do, and reviewing it was pretty cumbersome. So I'll try to put this in writing as well. But uh, the other thing about the tier one notification is it doesn't appear to have a end to the tier one notification. So if an action level is exceeded, does this mean that we're on tier one notification until 100% of lead service lines are changed out, or even after that? And I'm not exactly sure. The other thing I want to point out is that most of the tier one notifications the public is familiar with include a boiled water advisory. And if there's confusion about that and someone boils water that actually has lead in it, it actually makes it more dangerous to drink. So I'm worried about how the implications across the board could be there. Okay, I have a couple of things here. 5 sequential liter bottles. Okay, this doesn't appear to clarify who the burden of the school and childcare testings are put on. I know that there are rules in place already for that. And I think this complicates that a little bit in that now I'm not sure if I'm supposed to pay or the schools continue to pay as they have in the past. I apologize here. Okay, so 5 bottle. I'm sorry, I'm just going through my notes here. The other thing that I'm seeing here is that instead of the 90% rule, we also have these triggers from one high sample, and there might be that somewhere in the past as well. But this seems to indicate that the 90% rule isn't there. I know that it has a section about having a request for individual samples. But it doesn't really clarify what that means when a homeowner requests a sample and where the burden is, and if we have to do it or not. It doesn't appear that we are obligated to do it. But if an individual sample that's done outside of the testing parameters can trigger the same tier one notification, what I think you do is stop people from doing any kind of test outside of that. So that to me also seemed like a limitation here. I think there are costs here, and I would love to know if there was a financial analysis that was done on the rules that are in there already. I think largely this does a lot of good for the rule to help clarify the sort of inconsistencies with the existing New Jersey rule and what is put into that lead and copper service line removal program. And I think that's a really great thing. I just want to make sure that some of the structural issues here are taken care of. And again, those couple things where it sort of changes the sampling requirements in a major way for systems that are already ongoing lead and copper, lead service line changeouts and all the other things. We know that we're going to have to change this continuously over the next 5 or 6 years as we finish this. So all these extra burdens do put a lot of time into the job. So thank you very much. I see 13 seconds left.
Great timing. Thank you, Cliff, for your comment. All right, Deandra, it looks like we have you back. We're going to unmute you soon. All right, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Good morning. Yes, we can hear you.
Awesome. Thank you. Sorry about earlier.
No worries.
My name is Deandra Cameron. I'm a policy manager at New Jersey Future. We promote sensible, equitable growth and infrastructure investments, including sustainable water systems and access to clean drinking water for all New Jerseyans. And we strongly support the state's goal of greatly reducing lead exposure, the proposed rule advances key aims. However, to ensure successful implementation, especially for overburdened, disadvantaged community systems, there are several practical concerns that I'll raise today, but we'll be submitting formal comments. The biggest challenge is the accelerated timeline. While we appreciate the speed at which we're reducing lead, there are certain upgrades to the rule that we're concerned that it doesn't allow for a proper planning window. So I'll touch on some of those measures. It moves up the deadline to about 6 months earlier than the federal rule, which means by our initial reading, requirements for implementation could start as early as July 2027. And that's a short kind of planning window for some of the shifts that we see in the rule, including the annual monitoring in 30 days and submitting plans in 90 days. And this makes sort of like the budgeting and contracting for many systems challenging. And so we're encouraging a revision just to think about the planning windows for some of the implementation. Some of the other ones are the ongoing 60-day resampling for single exceedances. And we're concerned that some of those are private plumbing beyond the supplier's control. And so we're encouraging a revision just to give systems a chance to be able to figure that out. Again, some of these are finance and cost issues. We're also raising the issue of treating all unknown of including all unknowns in the 10% annual. This could create another unrealistic cost burden, and we're suggesting to apply the mandate to the initial lead and galvanized lines and requiring prompt verification of unknowns to avoid any delays. We support the good faith effort for full replacements, and we're recommending clearer protocols for emergencies and owner refusals, including any other suggestions for municipal ordinances where possible. We realize that homeowners can still refuse while there is a mandate to replace all by 2031. So just requiring a revision for when those borders kind of cross between no more refusals and all replacements poses a challenge with meeting that 10%, including getting to those final replacements. For corrosion control, we noticed that there's a installation of a 12-month from the federal 24-month, which it could be challenging. And we're also raising concerns about the pipe scale analysis, lab capacity concerns for all of that, and just some recommendations to not be so prescriptive with the methods that could help alleviate some of the cost concerns and lab capacity to do those kind of prescriptive analysis. The 1 hour public notification rule for municipal officials is a tight window since lead is more of a chronic issue. And we think a 24-hour window would be something that will enable even more accuracy in the communication and what could be put out in terms of the accuracy of the information that could be put out within an hour. We're just concerned that there may not be due process in getting information out by trying to meet that 1 hour compliance deadline. And finally, just clarifying language around schools and childcare facilities. Some places in the rule, it mentions that you should offer sampling or that you shall sample. So just flagging those, as well as the department should also clarify if the Department of Children and Families has a role in the identification of unregistered facilities that are required to sampling, or if there is a list that will be provided, or what kind of provisions are in place to kind of identify those. And that is the end of my testimony. We want to thank you all for just getting the rule out, and we appreciate all the hard work, and we'll be submitting written comments. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you for your comment. We appreciate it. Are there any other folks looking to comment? If so, please feel free to raise your hand. And if you are calling in, you can also press *5 or *5. Good morning, Amy. You should be able to unmute yourself and please introduce yourself.
Thank you. My name is Amy Goldsmith. I'm the New Jersey State Director for Clean Water Action. I'm also a member of a variety of different Jersey Waterworks committees working on lead, and have worked on lead and drinking water for probably 30 plus years. I just wanted to make a couple of comments, and we'll submit some written testimony as well. I think that first off, the slight discrepancy of dates between the EPA standard going into effect and this rule, probably 6 months difference, doesn't need to be maybe to align in that regard. I do know that, EPA issues guidance, that's not rules. And we also know that we're in a very, not very friendly environmental climate at the federal level. So whenever the state can be better and stronger, more protective, that's always better for us in the state of New Jersey, for our residents, especially for our most vulnerable who might be in schools and daycare centers, whether they're registered or unregistered. So I just wanted to make that point. The other is that while there are comments made earlier about the public notice, the 1 hour notice, it is important, knowing from the experience of Newark and when notice went out, how fast it was it, thorough and complete? Was it the best informed? So I don't know if 24 hours is the time frame. Maybe that's too long, but 1 hour certainly is pretty challenging. And also, we don't want to give confusing and misinformation to people. So I think that maybe there's something less than 24 hours, because that's still, people are using water in ways that maybe are not safe and should be informed better. But 1 hour is too short. The other is that we also know from the situation in Newark that corrosion control testing was not done as frequently, and as a result, the scaling, the protective scaling that was on the pipes, were sloughed off, and it created, a health danger to Newarkers, and resulted in appropriately the replacement of the lead service lines. Um, I would be concerned about reducing or extending longer than the 12 months to do corrosion control. I think it's something that is it's like the canary in the coal mine kind of thing, that tells us that we're not, something's not right, either in the chemistry of the utility or in some other part of the system. And we know over time, as we replace all these lead service lines, that concern will be reduced, because we'll have fewer lead service lines to worry about. But still, I think that it was the thing that signaled um, Newark to take action. I agree that municipal ordinances that help enhance access to testing and evaluating unknowns is critically important. It's a key part of the law, is to get those unknowns known and to get those lead lines replaced. The other is that in everything that we do, whether it's our notices, how quickly we give them and what formats we give them is all critically important. And in a world where most people don't read legal notices, people don't read newspapers, they don't have access to newspapers, multilingual, it is so critically important to make sure that the information goes out in different kinds of ways, whether it's social media or multilingual radio, as well as to trusted community organizations, public health centers where people are coming in on a regular basis with their family or their kids. Things like that are just so important to use multimedia to inform the public about what is going on, also how to get access to testing, to get replacements, sort of all down the line. The more people are informed, the better people are at making decisions and feeling more comfortable or more trusting of whether it's a utility or a city that's running a water supply. So I think I'll stop there and I will consider making some written comments by the deadline. Thank you very much. And I really appreciate the hard work that the DEP and the utilities have been doing to address lead service line issues. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment, Amy. Anybody else would like to speak, please feel free to raise your hand or select *5 if you're calling in. Good morning, Sandy. We see your hand is raised. We are working to get you access so that you can unmute yourself. And please introduce yourself, state your name, spell your name, and identify your organization, please.
Hi, Sam. Thank you. My name is Sandra Kutzing, Sandra, Kutzing, Kutzing. I'm with CDM Smith, an international consulting firm. I wasn't planning on commenting, but a couple of the comments mentioned, I would like to reiterate. So a couple things, the 1 hour timeline, I am in agreement. I think that that's worrisome. Once those 90th percentile calculations are performed, and I've done several of them, there's usually a quality control aspect. You want it to be checked. You go back and check that the right samples were calculated, go back and look at the data, discuss the response, and that 1 hour timeline is, my fear is that there will be an announcement of an exceedance, and then someone goes back and checks it and it was a mistake. So just trying to prevent mistakes. I agree with the previous commenters that 1 hour is just too short, and don't want to alarm people and provide misinformation. Regarding the corrosion control treatment, I agree with the previous statements. Getting corrosion control treatment installed as quickly as possible is critically important. And I was involved in the Newark project, and we were able to get temporary corrosion control treatment installed within 7 months, which was an incredible feat. But it was temporary, and it took, I think, 3 years to get the permanent installed because of getting permits. We had to get special zoning approval. We had to, it takes time. We had to bid it out. So I would just make sure whatever language is in there that it allows for temporary corrosion control treatment within the 12 months to give time to allow for the correct contracting and permitting mechanisms to take place for that permanent installation. The third thing is there were a couple of locations where the word must was used for sampling, where I think offer may be more appropriate, such as I believe it was with the schools or the post replacement sampling that a utility must sample within the 6th month. So 2 things with that: must, we can't force people to do the sampling. We can only offer, and so maybe an offer of X number of times would be sufficient there for consideration. And then as far as the 6th month, although I like the 6th month, that's a very short timeline. What happens if someone doesn't return the sample? They want to return in the 8th month. A little bit more of a window would be helpful there. In the federal rule, it's 3 to 6 months. I think defining that timeline is a little challenging with limited resources. The next thing, tier categories. I am concerned, and maybe it's just me working with different states, but having different tiers than the federal rule, I find that's going to be a logistical mess, especially with all these new online programs that and software that can be used to sort out the tiers. And if New Jersey has to have this special tiering designation, I think that's going to cause some confusion, just for consideration. And then Deandra brought up that the corrosion control treatment requirements, or the corrosion control treatment study requirements, are a little prescriptive, and I would recommend leaving it a little bit more open, because there is innovation. There's new technologies coming out all the time. There's new ways, for example, to look at pipe scales that can be modeled with geochemical modeling. So I would just recommend maybe leaving it a little bit open, or otherwise approved by the department, just in case there is something that the department does end up being comfortable with that maybe isn't in the rule, giving yourself the opening to approve other things that could potentially reduce costs, speed up the timeline of assessing a corrosion control issue and finding a solution faster. So that's it. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you for the rule. I know it's been a long time coming. Congrats for getting it out. Thanks.
Thank you, Sandy. Thanks for your comment. I believe next is a John. You should be able in a second to unmute yourself. And please introduce yourself, state your name, spell it, and identify any organization or association.
Hi, John Williams, JOHNWILLIAMS, Borough of Fairlawn. I'm the licensed operator. I jumped in late to this meeting, so I apologize if this has already been asked and answered. In the proposal, I saw a mention of inventorying customers' interior plumbing, and I was wondering if we get some clarification to what extent of the building are we inventorying, and who does it? Does the water system do that, or the homeowner?
Hi, good morning, John. I don't believe I'm able to comment to that effect during the public comment period, but I think I'll be able to once the public comment period is over.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry about that. Harvey, I see your hand is raised. I think you should be able to unmute yourself, but.
Great. Real quick, I just wanted to support the comment that one of the previous speakers noted, how in the publication it notes during the 6-hour stagnation period, no water should be used throughout the entire building, throughout the home. And that's another issue. While in theory that sounds great, I don't know how that's going to be applied. Typically, someone might stop using a kitchen faucet, say at 11 p.m. And when they take a sample, say at 7 a.m. in the morning, that's fine. That's more than the 6-hour stagnation period. But I don't know how you're going to say, but let's say someone wakes up at 2 a.m. and goes to the bathroom and flushes the toilet, that's water usage, and that would somehow invalidate or affect the 7 a.m. kitchen sample, or how people are even going to know if that's going on throughout a house. I just raised that as an issue. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Harvey. If anybody else would like to speak, please feel free to raise your hand. Good morning, Tom. You should be able to mute yourself in just a few seconds. Please state your name, spell your name, and then identify your association.
Okay, nice to see you again, Samantha. It's Tom Herritz, Herits. I'm with the Belleville Water Department as their engineer and operator. My only comment is that these 5 samples, at each site is going to be very challenging to at least this water operator. It's hard enough to get people to do 1, and to do 5 is going to be very challenging. The cost, there's going to be 5 times the amount it is now, and I don't know, hopefully I could get my 60 samples in with 5, 5 samples at each site. That's all I have to say. It's going to be very challenging.
Thank you for your comment, Tom. And if anybody would like to speak, please feel free to raise your hand or select *5 on your phone if you're calling in. Good morning, Eamon. You should be able to unmute yourself. Please introduce yourself, state your name, spell it, and identify your organization.
Good morning. Thank you. Eamon Hall, EAMONHALL. Work with New Jersey American Water. Again, sediment, a lot of people on the call. Thank you for getting the rules out. Long time coming. Did have some time to read through it and did have a couple immediate comments. And then obviously we will provide some written comments as well. I guess first, the master meter and identification of materials not owned by a supplier, i.e. Princeton University, we own up to the meter, and then everything inside the university is privately owned. So how do we go about inventorying those private owned sides? Again, is that onus on us as a water supplier or on the university that owns the mains, etc.? So a little clarification on the master meters and identification of the materials not owned by the supplier. Another something else that stuck out was, and this was in the other proposals, but if a customer or property owner replaces their line within 180 days, the supplier must provide notice of risk mitigation, putting the onus on customers replacing their own service line to now putting the onus on the water supplier to provide them with risk mitigation efforts, etc. How would a supplier be held to this, as we are on the customer notifying us that work was done within 180 days? Another one is the bill message. Again, I think Sandy spoke to this, that it's very prescriptive in that it needs to be on the sampling needs to be performed 6 months following a replacement, but it also states we need to have a bill message talking about the availability of testing, which seems counterintuitive if it's only defined as the 6th month. What is our bill message supposed to be saying to these customers? Do we run the bill message for the first 5 months and then tell them on the 6th month they're going to get a sample? So a little more clarification on the bill message, and post LSLR replacements. Let's see. Another clarification we would like to get is reconnecting service to a disconnected lead service. What is that considered? Is that considered if there's a meter, just a meter installation? If the meter's pulled and it's a lead service and we need to install a meter, is that considered a disconnected service, or is that just a inactive service? Or are we talking disconnected service where it's disconnected from the main entirely? So a little clarification on that as well. And then school and daycare inventories. I know we've talked about this. There's been some comments, but again, it seems like the onus is being put on the water supplier to identify unregistered or non-licensed school and daycare facilities and sample at these facilities. What is why was that decision made? What were the impacts that went into that? Basically, we're trying to find non-state funded or licensed facilities and offer to sample them on the water utilities dollar. Not saying I don't agree with the sampling. It's just, how are we finding this list? How are we finding unregistered? And again, a little more clarity. Is it a house that has 2 children that it provides care to, or is there a number, similar to, is it 15, etc. And that's all. That's all I have for now. I'm sure we'll have some more written comments to follow, but just wanted to get those on the record. Again, appreciate your time. Thank you.
Sure, yeah. Thank you for your comment. We appreciate it. As a reminder, if anybody wants to comment, you can select the raise your hand or press *5. We'll give it a few minutes. If anybody would like to comment, please do so. And we will hear if there are any comments. If not, we will close it. But again, we'll give it a few minutes for doing so. Hey, Sandy, you should be able to unmute in just a second.
Well, again, I figured I'd get one more on the record. First, I absolutely agree on the unregistered or unlicensed childcares, just providing some guidance on how to find those and a better definition of childcare. I believe I read has to be the primary use of the facility for it to be considered a childcare. So if that's not the case, just additional clarification on that. But the comment I wanted to bring up was about the sampling plans. So there's a statement in there that the sampling plan, not just the sampling pool, needs to be updated every time there's a site change. And anyone that's doing a lead service line replacement program, which should be everyone with lead service lines, those sites are changing pretty frequently, sometimes on a monthly basis. So seems like quite the burden to update the plan and resubmit it every 30 days. By the time it gets submitted, it'll probably be outdated again. So I'd recommend maybe just the pool being updated. And then if an ongoing program is happening, maybe an update every 6 months or something along those lines. I didn't hear that comment, so I just wanted to get that on the record. But thank you.
Sure. Thank you again. As a reminder, if anybody would like to make a comment, please raise your hand. Otherwise, we'll give it another minute or two before we will close the hearing. We're going to give everyone one more minute, and if there are no more comments by 11 o'clock, we will close the hearing. All right, as it seems there are no more comments, I will now close the hearing. Thank you, everybody, for coming. We appreciate your comments. And as a reminder, if you'd like to submit any written comments, you may do so using the rule comment form on our website or sending them in a hard copy. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us in that same email in the chat, leadndw@dep.nj.gov. Thank you. Have a nice day.